Contenders, ready! Gladiators, ready! 3, 2, 1, the Gladiators!
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Glad Pod in association with Gladiators TV. I'm David Blackmore, and as always, sitting opposite me is none other than Jousting Jet.
Oh,
I think by now you probably worked out that I'm just literally Googling adjectives that begin with J to give to Jet for every episode. But this one jumped out at me because Joust was also an event on Gladiators. So it got me thinking, were you any good on Joust, Di?
can you guess by my that actually, no, that's not a good one, good introduction for me. I did once. Terribly. A tiny story behind that is because I'd ruptured a disc in my lower spine. So I had awful sciatica, and Nigel Lithgow and the producer sent me to someone in Harley Street for an epidural injection to coat the disc so I wouldn't get the sciatica and the excruciating pain and the weakness in my left leg. It was wrong, so they put me in the hospital in Birmingham near the indoor arena, and I got a lumbar epidural which actually worked. I lost my legs overnight and I came in on crutches, and within 2 days I was back in the arena going, I can walk properly, this is great, I'm going to be gladiatorial again. And I think in that series they stuck me on Joust the once, but of course I still wasn't strong enough. I was absolute. So Jousting Jet really wasn't happening, and I'm sure producer Paul will have the footage of it somewhere. Not my finest moment, but I did a good dismount off the podium. That's what I can remember. But thanks for that, David, anyway.
Well, there you go. I didn't realise it was going to be such a story about Joust. I thought it was going to be a yes or no answer, but there you go. Now, you've probably heard us mention that this podcast is in association with Gladiators TV. Do you know what? You may already be following them on social media because they're on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, and they've got quite a big following on there. It all leads through to a website that is run by the ultimate Glad superfan, and that is Paul Noddings. Now, Paul has been instrumental in getting this podcast off the ground and getting us the guests as well. And in the short time that I've known him, and Di, I know that you've known Paul a lot longer than I have, but he is quite simply the oracle of all things Gladiators. He just has, honestly, he has so many stories, particularly with Hunter and Vogue, who we've had on before. I said to him, these are the clips that I need, and he just dug them out so quickly. He knows his stuff. He's also got his own Glad journey, like we all have, like Di and me and Hunter and Vogue, and you listening, you've all got your own Glad story to tell. He's also been tied to and connected to so many gladiators for so many years. I mean, he was backstage doing design work for Gladiators whilst it was still on. So that is why I wanted to speak to him as part of my own journey of discovery, as part of this podcast. Yes, I want to speak to Cobra. Yes, I want to speak to Wolf and John Anderson, but I want to hear stories of everyone who lived and breathed the show. And Paul is the epitome of somebody who lived and breathed the show but managed to get their way in through being a superfan. It wasn't because they were athletic or because they were a presenter. It is because of him being a superfan. I think everyone listening is going to absolutely love listening to a fellow Glad fan's story. I think Paul has, and Paul will continue to play a key role in keeping Gladiators alive, the spirit alive, and he 100% deserves this Glad Pod episode.
He absolutely has, and you know what? It gives me the pride, so much pride, and I do well up a lot about anything Paul Noddings, that he not only was Superfan, but we've now promoted him to Producer Paul, because he doesn't just keep the spirit of Gladiators alive. I think he kind of helped make the show. As a young fan growing up with the show, he started to become the Oracle. There was nothing that went past everybody's knowledge on that show, in front of the camera and behind the camera, and a whole lot more, that this young man, now this gorgeous man, does not know. So it really excites me to have Paul on board amongst us, and now not as a super fan but as our Oracle, producer Paul.
Producer Paul. I like the sound of that. Hopefully he will as well. This is going to be a different GladPod for us. It is. It's going to be a bit different, but that's what excites me about the journey that we're going on, that not all the podcasts are going to be uniform. We are going to hear from different people who worked on the show, different people involved in the show. And I hope to be sharing more stories from Glad fans in future episodes, because to you, Di, and to all the other Gladiators, the fans made the show what it was. It made it the success that it was. They were so important to you then, and they're probably even more so important now, aren't they, Di?
It's really interesting. I literally, the word backbone comes to mind. Bearing in mind again that the first episode that was filmed, there was not many people in the audience. So, because no one knew what this show was, this huge arena called Gladiators, they'd sort of touted for this new game show being filmed at the NIA. So a lot of local people were given tickets for this. Well, why is this? What are we going to go and see? And so we literally had one block, and the NIA is huge. I think there's about 9,000 people can sit in that arena, like a football stadium, but obviously covered. It's called Barclays Arena Stadium now, isn't it, or something? However, so we got these poor souls, which I think became some of the staple of the Gladiator fan base in the very early days. And we sat them in one block. And so then the guys at LWT, with their digital awareness of the time, we're talking early 90s, superimposed them as if they were around the whole arena. So throughout the whole of the first series, what you're seeing is actually one block of audience kind of made to look as if the whole arena is full, because no one knew. And so from day one, when we walked into the arena and we started filming to not many people live, to then Series 2, people could not, love no money, get in and be our live audience. And each show took 6 to 7 hours to film, and we did two shows a day. That's a long time for people to sit. It told us then that in reality, not just at the end of the camera once the show had gone out on air, that these people are already massively behind us, loving the show and willing to sit there for hours on end with the huge big set changes to wait for that 30 seconds or that minute again when it would be screaming and shouting for their favourite gladiator or their favourite contender to win, And so our fans, to this day, on all the fond memories, there's kind of, I think when you love something, that love never dies. Maybe the energy can change or whatever, but I'm a great believer in passion and love and those things that light us up, particularly as you start looking back and have fond memories of something, you just light up. Oh, I remember that, and she was my favourite. I loved that event. We all have that in our lives about a TV show that when we were growing up. So these fans from the word go, even the ones that were there in that first series, sort of hauled in off the streets of Birmingham, you will come and watch this show and support these people running around in lycra, that they literally were and still are the backbone of the show. Anyone listening, you'll be still part of our backbone, because some of you listening, I know, will be our original fans. So while we're there then, please do get in touch and say, yeah, I was there from day one, David. That would be brilliant, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. As always, let us know what you think about this podcast and what you thought of the others. Please get in touch with your glad stories as well. It's so important and we love receiving them. The gladpod@gmail.com is the email address you need. We're also on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram at The GladPod. Also, don't forget, if you're listening to us on Apple iTunes, rate us. Please give us a 5 and leave us a really good review. We've had some on there that, we've not really mentioned about leaving a review for us. So it's been great to one day I just opened it up and there are all these fantastic reviews about our podcast. So please do, if you get a chance, give us a rating. It must do something in terms of helping us go higher up the charts. I don't know. But look, we think that you're really going to enjoy this week's Glad Pod. I've made my pitch. I've told you why I think this is important. And actually, do you know what? I know there are a few of you who've been keen to discover more about this kind of secretive person that is Paul Noddings. He doesn't give too much away, does he? Well, here you are. We've got him sat down, root and branch. We're going through his Glad journey. Enjoy.
3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to our Glad Pod, and out of all of them, this is so important to all of you who have loved the show from the beginning as much as many and many and many of us have. Our next guest is pivotal, central in fact, to having kept the whole gladiatorial spirit alive for nearly 30 years.
He put all fans to shame, doesn't he?
He does.
He's the epitome of a superfan.
It is none other than Paul Noddings from Gladiators TV fame. So all of you who've been following us on Insta and Twitter for all those years, this beautiful, handsome man who's in our studio now, who's a long-time old friend of mine, is that very person. If you've clicked on and you're watching and you think, I don't recognise him, this is Paul Noddings, everybody. Paul Noddings, Paul Noddings. Welcome.
Thank you. That was some introduction.
Paul, for me, the first question, the most obvious question is, when were you first hooked on Gladiators? Was it the first episode? Were you old enough, presumably, for that?
No, it was definitely the first episode, but I think it was even before that. I think it was the first TV ad that I ever saw.
Oh, yes, of course.
Weeks running up to it. I was 10 years old, and I remember just catching it on TV and just going, what on earth is this programme? And literally it was all around school, like, you've got to be watching ITV on a Saturday because there's this brand new show. And it just was something that we'd never ever seen ever before.
For 9 weeks from this arena, 24 contenders will battle in epic competition such as you've never seen before. Gladiators won't pick on people their own size. It's everyday people from all walks of life that will take on the might and muscle of ITV's superheroes. It's family fun. The competition's electric. Gotta move like a streetwise fighter. Gotta breathe the fire of the tiger. Gotta give your all to win. Ready or not, let the challenge begin. The perils of the wall. The clash of the atmospheres, the awesome danger zone, the high-flying swing shot, the arm-wrenching hang tough, the brute force of duel. So the stuff don't matter. Can we see the state of the gladiators? Can you challenge the gladiators? Will you take on the gladiators? Will you be the new champion? It's the biggest ever special event sports entertainment series. The Gladiator! Starting next Saturday.
And I was always a fan back in the day of like the likes of Thundercats and He-Man, and this was literally those characters as real life
superheroes.
And it was just amazing. From episode 1.
What was it particularly about it though? Was it that superhero element to
I
it?
think it was that, and then it was the graphics, it was the costumes, the music, the whole kind of the rock vibe to it as well. And it was just like, say, the arena was spectacular. It was just absolutely everything about it, really.
Because, of course, for the first series, no one knew about it, because we were there in virtually a bare arena with however many people they could put on one stand, on one kind of whole block, which then had to superimpose around, because no one knew about it. So from that very first one, it was all fresh and new to the everybody in their living rooms. We didn't even know what we were doing, so we're all kind of feeling our way, from riggers to crew to camera to timings on everything and on the events as Glads. So no one could have been part of that first one. What does that feel like to know that you kind of watched something that was literally being sort of unravelled in front of the cameras?
Yeah, I think I was just more gutted that I'd never heard about it before, to be able to go and watch it for that first
That would
series.
be the one you
Yeah, that was
That was the
why I'm
one series
asking.
that I never ever saw live, and I'm not sure if they filmed it the same way as the later series. I'd never seen the American Gladiators before, so I didn't literally have anything to compare it to. But I just remember that literally every Saturday I was hooked.
In October 1992, Gladiators crashed onto your TV screens. A brand new concept in sports entertainment. It immediately captured the imagination of its audience, averaging over 11 million per show. The Sun's TV critic Gary Bushell called it a knockout battle game. The Observer, a futuristic adventure playground. The Sunday Times, LWT's new big hitter, and they don't get much bigger and hit harder than the awesome hammer blows of Shadow. Let's take a listen to what some of the audience at Gladiator Arena thought.
Better than wrestling.
Better than Hulk Hogan?
Yeah? Shadow is.
What do you like about Shadow?
Oh, he's a man. He's a real man.
I like the Wolfman.
You like the Wolfman?
Yeah.
It's brilliant to be
He
popular.
seems to wind everyone up.
Dynamic, keep the action moving.
Rippling muscles. Brilliant, really good. Fantastic. Never seen it before and the kids loved it.
And then obviously all of the merchandising started with it, so it was kind of sat there with your sticker book on a Saturday night, kind of watching it and trying to get all of the stickers in the book filled up. And yeah, I think I was just at that pivotal age where it has just captured my imagination so much.
And then you went to Wembley for the live series at the end. So when was that advertised? You must have been begging your parents.
So, yeah, I was. It was like for the Easter live show, so it was the first time that the show had gone on the road. It was advertised absolutely everywhere, and I remember begging my parents, going, "Please, can I go? Please, can I go?" And they were like, "Sorry, Paul," because I was from a northern town, Darlington, and it was getting filmed in, well, not filmed, it was live in Wembley, and they were like, "Sorry, it's too far, too expensive," because you had to pay for the tickets. So I was absolutely gutted. Seeing competitions on TV to win tickets. Please, can we enter? Sorry, Paul, no. And literally the day before, my mum gave me an envelope and it had this letter in, which I've actually still got. I opened it up and I had never felt excitement like it. I literally was screaming, ran down the garden, ran back. And then before I knew it, I was on the train to London and going into Wembley Arena for the first time. And yeah, just the feelings, even now.
I've got them as well. That's such a lovely story.
It's just everything that you'd seen on TV, the music, the atmosphere. Obviously, it was sold out, so the atmosphere with the audience was just even better than the TV series, than the first series. So, yeah, it was absolutely amazing.
Are we going to have a good time? Have we got any Gladiator fans in? We want to hear you this afternoon, we really do, because we've got a wonderful spectacle for you coming up right now.
So you've watched it on TV religiously, you've gone to see the live show, but when did you actually get to meet your first Gladiator? Because the thing with the fans that I think we've already got quite early on in this series already, is that they've all got a story. They can remember stuff from 30 years ago just like that.
Yeah, totally. I can get transported back to the exact moment. So, yeah, what happened was Diane, Jet and Cobra were both in my local pantomime in Darlington Civic Theatre in 1993. And my next door neighbour where I lived, she actually worked for the theatre. And she obviously knew that I was a massive fan of the show. Had seen me on my parents' front wall, practicing the games and beating up my friends and stuff like that. And it knew that I was just a massive fan of it. So she was like, "Oh, Paul, come down and I can get you backstage to meet Jet and Cobra." I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So I can remember getting ready to watch the show. I hated pantomimes, I still do. I sat through the show to just get to the end of it. And then she came and she took me backstage, and I can remember I had so much merchandise on. I had these big, massive Gladiators badges, Gladiators cap.
So you played it cool then?
I didn't know what cool was back in the day when I was 10 years old.
You tried to just keep it on the lowdown.
I literally went for it. Literally every bit of merchandise that I could wear, I wore.
You hung it on yourself, didn't you?
Yeah. And then, just met Jet, and it was just amazing. And I was actually really lucky because Scorpio and Hunter were there at the same time watching the show. So,
that's right.
I remember you took me into the restaurant next door, and you introduced me to them all. And then that was it really. And I went along with I was massively into graphics at the time, so my love of Gladiators with graphic design, I kind of had merged the two. And I remember going with these little fact files that I'd pulled together for Jet and Cobra, and kind of shyly handed them over of my piece of work that I'd done.
And I'm sure Hunter and Scorpio felt like left out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know they were going to be there, so I don't even think I had their badges on at the time.
Oh, no.
But yeah, that was basically the first time that I ever met them both. And I mean, it just went on from there, really.
Yeah, that was the start of an amazing journey, wasn't it?
Yeah, massively. And
I remember it very well because, people said,
what were you doing in that panto? What panto was it?
It would have been it would have been Aladdin if I was Scheherazade, and of course Mickey Cobra was the genie. And I'd done a lot of musical theatre before, in dance and choreography and other parts of another career. So it was home to me, and to watch Mickey kind of blossom on stage and do all his bodybuilding stuff and do these little bits of acting and all the fun. As you're right, panto, it's either for you or it's not. But I remember you coming with your big badges on, and your cap was bigger than you. And I just remember your beautiful face and your smile, and it was probably one of my first real exposure to somebody who so genuinely loved the show. And I felt a bond with you, actually, because being a local girl to you, to Darlington, I'm originally from Billingham, which is literally about 15 miles away from Darlington. I really felt a sense of, here is somebody that I wanted to keep in contact with, and then unfurls the rest of this story, because we did, didn't we?
That was your first ever design commission, wasn't it?
It was, we kind of, you got in touch about kind of doing something because of the sheer amount of fan mail that you were getting, and asked me if I would kind of come up with some designs for almost like newsletters and stuff like that. So I kind of went away and did some. We worked together on kind of what they were, and it kind of went from there, really. And I actually got my first ever job reference was from Jet from Gladiator. Which, even to this day now, when I go for interviews and stuff like that, I still manage to sneak that in, and it's always the main talking point of the whole interview. So, I'm sure with many jobs, and definitely when I was going to university, when I went in for my interview, and they were like, you did work and you had references from Jet from Gladiators. So it's always kind of like, definitely been a help to me.
I remember when you asked me, I was a bit kind of, websites? What are these? Well, they certainly sound modern, and they're going to be the future.
They'll never last.
They'll never last, no. And I was amazed by, and then of course it's an incredible progression that you've gone on to do ever since that. You must absolutely love what you're doing.
But I think you could argue that actually at such an impressionable age as well, to get those design commissions set you on that path to doing what you do today.
I think that's the biggest thing, is like talking about the story, and people often ask me about it, and it feels sometimes that it's not real. Like, to think of a 10-year-old doing all of these design works, and kind of I did it from the age of 10 onwards. It just doesn't feel like as if it's something that would happen. It doesn't feel like as if a 10-year-old would do this work for Gladiators and then be invited to the shows and go backstage to take photos and interviews and stuff. It's such a weird story to tell that it almost doesn't feel real, but it is what it is. And it progressed from doing the kind of the newsletters and stuff for Jet's fan mail to then doing work for pretty much all of the other guys.
Well, because Jet introduced you to the rest of the Gladiators backstage.
I got invited down to the filming the year after, and I remember Diane was like, and I'll get you backstage and you can meet the team. and I was so excited, but I got there and I remember holding my autograph book and my pen, literally walked in and Shadow was in front of me. And I literally snapped my pen.
Oh no!
I was just like so nuts. I was shaking. It was just intense because I'd just watched the show, seen it live again, and obviously watching it for the recording in Birmingham. It was quite different to the live show in terms of kind of like how they filmed it, and there was new events and everything. And it was just unbelievable feeling. And
would you ever have envisaged, I can't say it, back then, the relationship you now have, which we'll go into, we'll see what's what's unfolded since, that you have, and how central to the show you actually are to this day?
Definitely not. I always was just doing it very much because I loved the show and I loved the kind of the graphic design of what I wanted to do, and kind of doing the interviews and asking questions, and very much from a fan point of view, trying to find out what I wanted to know, and building that relationship with the guys. So it was always kind of just something that was kind of what I was interested in as a hobby. I never ever thought that it would kind of spark off so many different ventures for me.
Did you just start pen friending every one of us in that way? And in those days you would send letters, wouldn't you? It wasn't sort of what we have now.
Yeah, I used to do the fan mail, but I think it was more for those moments backstage at Birmingham when I would do a piece of work for one of the gladiators, and then they would show the other gladiators and they'd be like, oh, I could get that as well. Even kind of, I remembered for Hunter, I did these photo montages of where I'd kind of screen grabbed him from the episodes and kind of did this massive poster, which he really liked. And then once one of the other gladiators saw it, they were like, oh, I want those graphics as well. And even some of the security guys, Bob Maxey, he wanted his own kind of like memorabilia of like his time with the show. So I can remember doing basically work for
everyone, just taking advantage of you.
Yeah, basically unpaid graphics work. Is what it was. Basically.
Could you imagine if someone came to you today and said that we've got this group of people that all design work, all for free?
Yeah.
But don't worry, they'll be your friends.
But in what they gave me back, because like you say, I was so young, and from watching these guys on TV, for them to be encouraging me and giving me the confidence in my work, and for me to be transported from watching this TV show to them being part of it, was just something that you could never buy it. It was just a once in a lifetime kind of experience, and it's something that has made me as a person, and has kind of like really helped build confidence in not only myself but my work as well.
So I think that there are fans like myself, and there are fans like you who you spent every summer holiday in Birmingham.
Yes.
Watching this.
So it was me, my mum.
I just enjoyed watching it on the telly. You know.
Well, yeah, there's the sensible route, and then there's.
It was being in that arena, watching it live is something that it was so addictive. It was just this feeling that you just can't buy it, and it's a feeling that I've never had since. So ever since the final episode, if I could go back and just relive it, it's almost like what people say about Christmas when you're a child and you kind of wake up at Christmas and you just want to feel that feeling. Walking into that arena was just a feeling that I can't even describe.
The last show, did you know it was the final one?
Yes, we did. Yes.
So that must have been even more emotional for you.
Yes, I was literally there. Me and my mum and my cousin were like almost like the last people to leave the arena, and they did this shot for the final show where they turned off all of the lights, so all of the blue neon lights went off and everything like that, and we just stood around, and it was really sad, but it was really nice to have that proper ending.
Sad it's the last series, because really this is the ultimate challenge.
It certainly is, and if you haven't guessed it by now, it really is the last series of Gladiators. And who'd have thought 8 years ago when we first started this show that it would go on for so long, bring us so much joy, laughter, blood, sweat and tears. We've met some fantastic people here on Gladiators. We've seen dreams and hopes realised and shattered. It's been a fantastic journey. We're going to leave you with some of those memories, and for the first time on Gladiators here, it's not goodnight, it's farewell.
Here we go. This is the end. 8 years I've been coming to this arena. 8 years I've been trying my best, and now it's all over. Well, I've enjoyed it. It's been a great time. and I'd like to say goodbye to all my fans.
And know that
I
it
feel
was the last show.
tearful.
I mean, Diane, you were supposed to be in the final series, actually. I think the producers kind of came to you to get you to compete.
And yeah, you've reminded me. Nigel actually called me. I'd not long gotten married. I was in my about 26. I'd moved to my first cottage in Frensham, just south of Farnham in Surrey, and the phone rang. The old days of the phone being like at a place in your living room, and you lift the handle up and you answer it. Nigel. Jet. Nigel, hello. I want my jet back to say goodbye. And that's literally what he said. I'm like, oh, Nigel, you flatter me. He said, no, seriously, I really would like you to come back for this last series. But I got so scared by my accident, and it was a near neck break, which would have been a little rough. So I said, I couldn't do any of the hang tough. Really was an event that I was quite strong at.
Yeah.
And I said, I can't envisage myself, Nigel, being able to do the high falls again, because the high falls really were where the accidents happened. He said, we'll rig it. We'll rig it so the rig's really low down over the mattress. So it's not a 15-foot drop. It would only have been a 5-foot drop. A drop's a drop, that, by the way. And we'll rig the cameras and shoot upwards to make it look like you're up much taller. And I just remember thinking, though, no, I can't. But if I couldn't perform to the level that I once could, then I wouldn't. But now to hear that's what you all did. Was it just you and your family, or were there certain special people? Were the Gladiators allowed to stand there on that last one?
Yeah, I mean, it was... The Gladiators weren't there. I think they did shots afterwards.
Right.
It was literally just, it felt like as if it was just me and my family really there.
And just turning off the lights, kind of thing.
Like, literally... They filmed it so quickly, so it wasn't in August, it wasn't in the summer holidays, and they kind of had to squeeze it in between other things. So it didn't have the massive audiences what it had previously. It felt more intimate. They didn't have all of the cheerleaders and stuff like that. So it was definitely kind of more rushed than the other years, really. But it was really nice to just be able to say goodbye and just know that that was the last time that I was going to be there, rather than kind of have that ending where it just ended on TV and you never got to go back again.
I suspect because I'm only a few years younger than Paul that I missed out on all this stuff. But the Gladiators newspaper, I had no idea what this was about until you told me about it.
It started off with the magazine and then progressed on to this Gladiators newspaper.
But so it was official, was it?
It was official, yeah. It was made by, I think it was the Birmingham Evening Standard.
Oh, right. Yeah. So, okay.
It was a proper official piece of merchandise that started off as a one-off edition, I think, and then it sold so many during the filming that they then...
So it was during the filming period? So it went
all year. So there was about, I think in total, there was probably about 15 editions of the newspaper that kind of was published.
And obviously you got involved with them.
Yes. And so they'd heard about the work that I'd been doing with Diane, and obviously, like I say, it was quite an interesting story, purely I think because of my age of me doing this work. So they kind of had got wind of this story and asked me if I would kind of give them an interview. So I can remember going down there with me, my mum and my cousin, and did the interview and spoke to them about why I was in Birmingham, and I was there to watch the show and get all of this content for the newsletters, because I also did, as well as Jet stuff, I did these 20p newsletters called Gladiators Updates that I would kind of send out, and the fans would literally send me a stamped addressed envelope, and then I'd send them these monthly newsletters with all of the latest
and
news.
These all your ideas? Because this is actually the previous version of what you'd now be doing on Twitter every day.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah.
So you're doing it naturally.
Yeah, it was literally my idea. Got permission from LWT to do it. They kind of asked me to send in a few examples. And
who did you have to approach for that, by the way?
It was actually a lady called Anna Conrich.
Oh, yes.
Nigel Lithgow.
That's the legal side, wasn't it?
Yeah, and they were like, as long as you're not making any money, the quality stays up to the standard of what you're doing, we're happy for you to do this. So I kind of was doing that, and fans were sending me stamped addressed envelopes for me to then send the newsletters back to them every month. I'd have phone calls with the production office, and they'd tell me the latest news of what was happening, and then obviously get some of the content from backstage and
scoops,
things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what the Gladiators newspaper had kind of picked up on, and we did the interview. And then, it kind of went a bit awry and a bit crazy.
Go on.
So basically, they had done the interview, like I said, and they found an angle of the story that was something that I think was said in kind of a joking statement. I can't remember if it was my mum or if they'd actually heard from one of the other fans that basically they'd said that I'd cancelled a family holiday to Florida in order to go to Birmingham to watch Gladiators. And
what was the headline? If it was, it must have been Jet something.
Yes, the headline was "Family cancels Florida holiday to jet to Brum." And it was literally, not even lying, it was in every national newspaper.
Do you still have the cuttings, the clippings of that?
Yes, but locked away.
It caused a lot of problems.
Because they'd taken photographs of me with my Gladiators banner and my mum and my cousin. But even when they published it, they said that my cousin, Bev, who's only a few years older than me, they said that she was my mum. So they'd got loads wrong. And the true story was that I hadn't cancelled the family holiday. The family holiday was supposed to be in the 6 weeks holidays, but that's when Gladiators was happening. So we moved it to October.
Oh,
so
I
still
see.
went to Florida.
Yeah.
But the press attention to it, because they give quite a strong angle on, they brought a lot of Diane's personal life into it at the same time.
Any excuse.
So as a 14-year-old, as I was at the time, it was mortifying. It was front page of my local newspaper in Darlington. My dad, who was still in the northeast while me and my family were in Birmingham, was getting hounded by the press. They were knocking on his front door, knocking on the back door. It was absolutely crazy. And
did you know about this?
Do you know what? I didn't, because by this point I'd have been living in London, Surrey for easily 10, 13 years, and very little connection other than visiting my own family back in the north once, twice a year, which is what I would do for little celebrations and things. No, I didn't know a great deal. I'm learning about this now, but I was aware there was something. So I remember we did have
I remember we did have a chat, me, you, and I think it was one of the producers, because I was absolutely mortified. I felt like as if the story had come, but because it had dragged loads of stuff in about you as well, I felt quite responsible for it. And I remember you pulled me to one side and you were like, "Paul, don't worry about it. It's absolutely fine. It's nothing that'll be forgotten about."
It'll be tomorrow's shit paper.
Unfortunately, in the northeast it wasn't. And whenever I would walk down the street, there was people shouting, "Oh, there's that Gladiators boy singing the theme tune." So and it never did go into the Gladiators newspaper, which was my most gutting thing. So I wanted to be in that newspaper, and I never ever was. So
was the deadline a lot after? Was it further behind then? The deadline, was it like so far that they thought, "Oh, it's old news now"?
No, they just literally must have sold the story to the national newspapers and just thought, "Well,
that's
it's
mad."
been done now." So,
and with the Gladiators update newsletter,
yes,
how because this is also so foreign concept to anyone who's under sort of 25. So you would have advertised it somewhere.
So basically, it was in the Gladiators magazine where they had a pen pal section where, again, looking back now, it would never happen.
No.
You used to send in your name, your age, your favourite Gladiators, and your street address. And then you'd just get letters from people, and then I'd be like, "Oh yeah, I was too busy to reply to them personally," so I would send out this newsletter, and then word kind of got around, and that's kind of how it had happened. But it was from...
And you kind of almost got more access off the back of that, didn't you?
Yeah, definitely.
It seems to be today, if anyone gets good access or scoop, they suddenly close ranks, but suddenly like, get more stories.
Definitely. I think the producers were so savvy with kind of knowing that if they could put the news out and keep the fans interested, then it was only going to grow the fan base. And there was always so much going on with, is this Gladiator going to leave? Who are the new Gladiators? What are the new games? There was always so much to talk about.
It was a huge machine.
There was never a point where there was something that wasn't happening. So it was just massively interesting to do.
At what point did you actually get a sense, or did you at all, that you're kind of quite important to the show? Pivotal, even in that journey.
I think I can answer for it. He still doesn't think he's pivotal to it.
I still very much think of myself just as a fan watching it, and just so lucky that I've been invited to so many different things over the years. But I think the one moment that I had was when it was like, "Oh, this is a bit interesting," was when it came back for Sky One. and they got in touch with me.
I was going to ask what you thought of that.
Yeah, and by this time the newsletters had kind of transformed into the website, which was massively popular, and they got in touch through the website and was like, look, we're looking to bring the show back, and we would love to get your thoughts as like a really important person in it. I think other people had already spoken about me, so they were kind of...
Was that the first time it dawned on you that you were the important person?
Yeah.
Great.
And so they invited me to the filming. I got like a tour of the arena before anybody else, and got to meet all of the gladiators. They asked me to be the official blogger for the Sky One Gladiators website. So again, I had all of that access to the backstage, doing interviews and photos, and then managed to kind of... They told me that they were going to do this Legends episode, and they wanted to get some of the others back.
Because I'm sorry to jump in, but what is it like by this point? You're actually putting together a sort of schedule about how to introduce new gladiators. Yeah. What is going on in your head? And thinking, well, the old guys are going to come back, and what are these new guys like? What was going on to see this new show come together?
It was an absolute dream job to do. It was like everything that I'd wanted to do, and to, like I said, to just be involved with it was fantastic. It was weird to see the show come together. Obviously, it was quite different to the original show, but the fact that they were bringing back the legends and they were asking me, oh, have you got contact details for this one? Have you got contact details for this one? And to be able to be the person that made some of this happen was fantastic, and to bring those guys back, and I think that's what all of the fans wanted. I know there's mixed opinions about the whole Sky One version of the show, but I think the best thing that could have happened from it was that we got 3 episodes of where the old guys came back and were back in the arena, and then obviously we had Jet and Hunter doing all of the online videos as well.
Gladiator.
So, yeah.
Brave warriors, terrifying gladiators, and big foam hands. Yes, it's everyone's favourite way to skive a few minutes off work, because it's this week's highlights.
Was that your idea?
That wasn't my
But it was a privilege now for us both. We would walk around backstage with a little hi-8, I think it was, and just one person on sound, and James and I would be like comparing the old wall to the new wall, and just the slight differences. And then we had the wonderful opportunity, of course, to go and film in a gym, sports-specific training for each event from what we would have done.
Yeah.
But it was a very exciting time. But do you feel it had lost its atmosphere just simply by the small... It was Shepperton, wasn't it?
Yeah,
the smaller shooting lot, as opposed to the huge arena.
I think that was one of the biggest things, was that it just didn't have the atmosphere of the original. I think as much as what they did good, I think they really tried to do a really good show, but I think they kind of took it down an avenue where it lost its authentic element that the original had, where they tried to make the characters of the gladiators something that maybe perhaps they weren't.
That's the one point. You know, this forum, they did a forum where they called Wolf, John Anderson, James Hunter, myself, and all these the Sky people, the very high up Sky people, all sat around this huge table at this meeting, this interview. And they went around the table saying, in your opinion, James Hunter, what would you say that we need to do with this new show? My one point is exactly what you just said. My one and only point that I felt I could bring to the table was, don't overproduce your gladiators.
Yes.
Let their personalities evolve. And I'll never forget, we were walking down the corridor just doing some grab little Vox Pops interviews with some of the new glads, and I think it was Battle Axe or something they called her, the red-haired, she was a shot putter, she was brilliant, really strong female. And I have to just say at this point, the new glads, the second generation, were phenomenally brilliant athletes.
Yeah.
Better athletes than we all were at the first time, because then you had to train better. But she marched by, she had a dressing gown on, and she had a choreographer mincing behind her, and she had a makeup artist, and there was like an entourage for each glad. And I thought, that's where it's gone wrong. That's where, if it does go wrong, it's almost like it wasn't allowed to be organic and fluid. That was my only personal opinion. So I'm glad you said that.
What are you saying about that?
I think little no points Leanne here needs to spend a little bit less time trying to perfect a battle axe hairdo, and you and your husband need to spend a bit more time in the gym.
So horrible that was.
Yeah, it just lost that variety of they kind of had the same gladiators on the same events, and kind of they were all quite mean as well. Whereas like the original show, you had that kind of, if they did well, then they would compliment the contenders. Whereas there was a bit of a villainous element to the gladiators.
Do you think that's what the producers really wanted them to do?
I think so. Yeah, I guess there's that whole element with like kind of WWE wrestling and stuff like that, which I think quite a lot of them actually went on to be really successful in the WWE as well. So yeah.
The Big O. I've got to say, Big O, the boys did do pretty well.
I'll tell you what I say. Average scores for average Joes, you know what I'm saying? And I'll tell you something else. The minute those boys stepped into the O-Zone, they realised that they had to resort to palming in people's faces just to get to a pod. I'll tell you something else, pal. I hope you do get through, because if you and me come face to face, I want to smash you right up.
Tornado, what were you saying to the audience during that?
I just say this once. I'm the baddest, I'm the meanest, I'm the toughest, the master of disaster is back in business, baby. You better understand.
Thank you, Master of Disaster.
Paul, I have to ask. Obviously, Jet was clearly one of your favourite gladiators. She leaves in 1996.
She does.
I mean, is that a bigger blow than actually Gladiators ending in 2000?
It was a massive shock. I remember going to Wembley.
You were there. Were you there for it?
Well, the live shows were paid for and were quite different, but I wasn't there for the unfortunate accident. I was there at the show, I think, the day after. So I remember going along, getting ready to sit and watch the show, and all of the gladiators kind of got introduced with the theme tunes at the start of the show, which was massively exciting. And then there was no Jet. And everyone was like, where's Jet? I remember everyone literally ran like, and then Nigel Lithgow came in and he was like, unfortunately Jet's not here because she had an accident on Pyramid. And yeah, you just think of these people being superhuman, so you're like, oh right, okay,
she'll be back tomorrow.
Yeah. But then as the weeks went on, and I think again going back to the Gladiators newspaper, there was an edition that went out, and there was one edition saying Jet, I'll never quit, and literally the edition after it was Jet, I quit. Which was really, I just remember reading it, and I could understand obviously why, but I just knew for me then it was probably never going to be the same again, really. I think unfortunately the show when you left Diane had experienced quite a lot of serious injuries.
There was
aside from yours.
There was,
which I think fundamentally changed what you could do in the later series, unfortunately. And even though they brought in some fantastic gladiators, and Rebel, who you had a bit of a overlap with because she was being tested out in your live shows, she came along and almost picked me up from where I was with the graphics work, and did very much what Diane did for me and progressed confidence-wise, and I went on to do her official fan club and did loads of merchandise for her because she was obviously a very successful Olympian as well, and that propelled me on for the later series really as well.
It's strange watching it now as an adult and watching it when I was a kid. All these background of the gladiators went over my head. When you look at them, Olympics, athletes, gymnastics, all of this, you just see them as these superheroes. You forget, some of their backgrounds are phenomenal.
Totally, yeah. And I think that was a massive thing. What again the original series did was they used to do these time-out segments where it would be the gladiators and they weren't in the gladiators' costumes, and they'd be talking about their background. And as a fan, that's what you wanted to know, because they were these mysterious superhero characters, and you the hunger to know as much as possible about them was as a fan, you just wanted to know everything for these people. So they were very clever, I thought, the producers, with those time-out segments where they'd give you just enough, but not everything. So you always wanted to know more.
That's really interesting. We used to enjoy doing those bits as well because it meant we weren't getting hurt.
So you had all this access. Yes. You must have surely had a go on some of the events.
Sneakily, yes.
Did you?
I did, yes. So when I was backstage, I remember being stood there with my mum, and she's really cheeky, my mum, and she was like, Paul, she was constantly pushing me forward because I was quite a shy, nervous child, and even though I wanted to do it when I was in the situation, I was kind of like a bit overwhelmed, and she'd be like pushing me forward, going, go on Paul, go on, and we were backstage and there was an atmosphere and she was like, Paul, get in the atmosphere. And I was like, no, I can't, we'll get told off. She's like, get in that atmosphere. She took the door off, lifted me in.
They're huge metal heavy things.
Got my photos in it, gave it a bit of a move around steadily, which was fantastic, and then also got to climb the wall, which was amazing. Yeah.
Without a harness?
No, with that.
Oh,
so that was fantastic. And then, luckily enough to get some props from the show as some of the gladiators left, and then when the show ended, so Nightshade gave me her pugil stick.
Oh, wow.
Fully signed. So, that was the first time of owning a piece of the show.
Where'd you keep your memorabilia?
He's not going to say.
It's actually pretty much all in my mum and dad's attic at the moment. A few pieces that I've kind of got at my place in London. But, and then the final episode, Hunter, when they had the final game of Powerball, he threw a Powerball at me to keep. So I've got that fully signed. On loads of the costumes that were kind of left over, some of the tracksuits, helmets.
You've cleaned them though, yeah?
The costumes, I kind of don't really touch them, they're just in a box. And, don't really go there. But I have got jets framed with the original sketch that Stephen, the costume designer.
Yes.
So I've got my first costume framed with the original sketch of that he did of the design.
What, the one where the pants were like Bridget Jones's?
They're massive. So that's kind of like my prized possession.
Because I've got that one, so you must have done two. Oh, that's right. We had two that we could.
They were really they were really expensive as well because they were all hand painted.
That's right. I must admit, Mickey Cobra, he was sharing with us that he didn't particularly like his in some way. Bless him. But I know Stephen worked so hard on, and they were his pride and joy, and all hand designed and hand done.
Yeah.
And you still got it framed.
I've got it framed, yeah.
So you've gone from newspaper piece never made it to pen pals and newsletters to the blog for Sky. When did Gladiator's TV website start?
So in various kind of different names, it had already been going since 1998. I think was the first year that I kind of launched the website, and I remember having a word with Ken Warwick backstage going, I really want to do the website. And it was back in the day of where websites weren't really that important for TV shows. And he was just like, yeah, go ahead, that's fine, do it. So I kind of launched it then, and there was nothing else for Gladiators really online, and it's kind of stayed around ever since then really in various different names. It was kind of called Gladiator Zone at one point.
Oh, was that you?
That was me, yeah. And then it kind of transformed into the kind of more official Gladiators TV, because I actually do it with association with the American Gladiators creator who owns all of the Gladiators franchise in America. A really lovely guy called Johnny Ferraro.
Yeah.
Johnny Ferraro.
And Paul has a contact. He's going to put us in contact, and we're going to get him on the show.
I want to get all of this. This is the background of how they must have sat around a table going, I've got an idea for a show.
Yeah.
I mean, that whole creation.
And we're going to have a wall, and we're going to run. They're going to chase up the wall, but the contenders are going to get a head start, which Cobra did not like.
Yes, Cobra didn't like any of that stuff. But again, how they conceptualise even the events and the whole thing about having these sort of superhero type gladiators. She says, I can't believe I'm saying that about myself. I'm talking about myself, but not myself. And like normal everyday people. I guess for me, it was like one of the first proper reality TV shows where people get a backstory. They get a chance to, you follow their journey in the arena all the way to that final. And by then you are like Eunice Urquhart, probably the most famous female contender in the UK show, and look at her story, and particularly now with where she's at. It's amazing, which we'll come to at some point. But your life must have started to sort of changed quite a lot throughout all of this. Did it kind of shape you quite heavily journalistically? Because I know you're not quite a journalist, you're in tech and design, but you must have that real part of your brain to be able to bring these stories together.
Yeah, I love like producing stuff, so whether that be interviews and things like that, and it goes back to kind of the first reference that you kind of gave me, which I kind of wanted from a design point of view, but you said, I remember there was a line in there saying, but you always ask the right questions. And I thought, do you know what? I quite like that side of it as well. So kind of, the design and the production side of things have really kind of propelled my career. And like I said earlier, kind of having that confidence from your heroes on TV to kind of give you that confidence to kind of push yourself even further. Something that, like you say, most people have been influenced via sports to kind of be fit and healthy and athletes and stuff like that, whereas the Gladiators for me was all like they pursued me as a graphic designer and made my career that way.
Well, it's helped keep Gladiators alive though, hasn't it?
Yeah, massively. I think there's always something to find out, there's always some piece of information that comes to light that nobody knew. There's always international versions, so I've recently been finding out a lot more about the Japanese version, which I'd never seen.
There's a Japanese version.
There was a Japanese version.
それでは早速我らのグラディエーターをご紹介しましょう。どうぞ。
It was around 96, I think. Wow. So I've recently been sent some video footage from some of the Japanese gladiators.
Right, so let's make a pledge now. Watch the footage, and we'll do a podcast purely on the Japanese version, because that sounds epic.
It's interesting.
バンバンバンガッツなスーパースペシャル in 横浜アリーナ壮絶バトルさらにスケールアップスマップが忍者がシャランキューが興奮と熱狂に横浜アリーナが揺れる土曜夜7時
They take the same events as us.
It was almost part of a quiz show, so it was kind of like they had a quiz element, and then they had a gladiators section, and then a bit more of a quiz section, I think, at the end.
All right, well,
teams of contenders.
We need to watch these, and we need to do an episode on this.
Versions are hilarious. Some of them are amazing, but yeah, like you said, there's always something to
We
find
need
out.
you back to pick your brains on every single one.
Oh, absolutely.
Cover the whole.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing with a Gladiators podcast. You can't do it service by just speaking to a few gladiators. You've got to do everything from the set design to Ken the photographer to to the people that created it, the people that brought it over here, the producers. There's so many stories to be had with it, and I think for me, what I hope comes out of the podcast is hearing all these stories, reviving the memories of people, and also potentially a GladCon.
Yes.
I mean, that'd be fantastic, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's my next kind of ambition is with all of the Comic-Con events that again I've been helping out with recently to kind of book certain gladiators, and there was one literally a few months ago where Hawk from Series 1, I got in touch with him to see if he would be interested, and he was like, yeah, go on then, I'll give that a go. And it was so good to just meet up with him again and really pull some of the guys who kind of were there in the very early days back into it again. And it got me thinking perhaps that if we could kind of create a Gladiator Con event where it's purely gladiators, get some of the costumes out of storage and get them on display, perhaps some photo shoots with the original pugil sticks. So yeah, it's very early stages, but I think I would love to do that, and it to be as much of a reunion for the Gladiators team as much as it is for the fans to kind of meet them. I would love to kind of get the whole...
Just think how many... We could do a live podcast there. Yeah. We could do, in little chats of everyone. And the other thing as well, saying all the different angles, it's fans as well. Like we've been hearing some great stories of people that said, I met so-and-so here and so-and-so there. And that's what it's all about as well.
I mean, I weirdly have met some of my best friends either through being at the recordings in Birmingham or through when I first did the website when it was on TV. We used to do every Saturday when the show ended, there was a Glad chat, like an online chat forum. And Jet, you actually were a special guest one time on that chat room. And yeah, I kind of met up with one of my friends from there who I knew from Birmingham. And yeah, she's one of my best friends now. And it's like progressed from Gladiators into kind of just everyday life, really.
Should Gladiators return?
Oh, it's a tricky one. I'm kind of in two minds. I think it was very much a show of its time. Obviously, looking at the Sky version, which came back quite short-lived, there was rumours about them kind of taking that for the next series, possibly to the National Indoor Arena in Birmingham, to try and really kind of get some of that atmosphere back. Didn't happen. Health and safety, obviously, with some of the events, would they be able to do it as well as what they could back in the day? I would hope so, because it would be, on a personal level, I would love to kind of be involved with it again and have some of those feelings that kind of remind me of back in the day. But I am kind of in two minds of whether it could capture the imagination as well as what it did back then, just purely because there was nothing else like it back then. Whereas now, yeah, I'm not sure. I'd love it to, but yeah, it would have to be done in a really good way with enough budget behind it on a really prominent channel. I would hate to see it kind of...
Yes, it needs to be given the kind of the credit and the platform that it deserves, with such a big, glamorous, all-inclusive Saturday night.
But very expensive as well.
Very expensive show to do, and we couldn't quite afford your fee today, so we're going to have to say goodbye to you just now, Paul. But Paul Noddings at Gladiators TV, will you come and visit us again, because we've got so much to cover.
Definitely,
especially a Japanese version as well.
100%. Thank you so much.
Oh my word, I'm lost for words. Not only is Paul Noddings the Oracle, he is one hell of a nice guy, David, isn't he?
Oh, absolutely. It was so good to hear of his glad journey. And I do like this term, glad journey, because I think, as we've said before, it's not necessarily just about the gladiator. It's also about the contender, for the audience member, for the crew. Everyone has a different glad journey, don't they?
They do. And his is very, very special. Obviously, there's no kind of hierarchy here, but from the age of 10, and the link that he had with me personally, which I feel very flattered about. And I think it was more geographical, because obviously I was working in Darlington with Cobra and Levanto and all that. But there was that special bond, and that bond was made, and I didn't realise, just by doing a reference for him in what's this web? What's a website in the days when they weren't even a thing? And just look at what he's gone on to do, not only for us and the glads and everything that is gladiatorial in the world, but in his own career.
Absolutely. And I think for him being hooked at the age of 10 and watching the telly every Saturday, he was almost kind of the right age at the right time, wasn't he, in terms of becoming a potential glad superfan. And he kind of almost puts me to shame a little bit as someone who, like him, would watch it every Saturday. But he really watched it every Saturday. You know, he the stuff that he knows, that you just think, how does he know that kind of information? It's just fantastic. And I really enjoyed the story he's telling about that surprise when he hadn't gone to see the first series, because obviously it had already been recorded, but that he'd got to go to Wembley to see the show live. And, you know, to go from Darlington to Wembley for a boy of his age at that time as well, you can just imagine how happy he was at that.
Yeah, that is quite a journey down from Darlington to the NIA. I just always remember his smile, and his smile's not changed. Yes, I could get very personal. His beautiful smile with his just gorgeous eyes and his big full lips, and it's not changed one bit. He is still that little boy, but now as a grown man version, with that gentle lilt in his voice, and his... It's palpable, his love and his genuine kind of motherboard the motherboard in his brain is, I'm sure it just says Gladiator, and that's it. You know, it's still
the funny story I found was that the fact that he wanted to meet you in Cobra after Lepanto and Darlington, as you said as well, but he still hates Panto.
Yeah, I know. Well, I don't blame him for that. Having done 21 Pantos and having a musical theatre background, if there's one thing, if anyone had ever said, "Oh, you'll end up doing Pantos," I'd have gone, "Excuse me, no, no, not for me." But I did, and I ended up absolutely loving them. But the irony there is, I'm sure that he, you know, that flags up quite a good thing, actually. If there are names in pantos, whether you like the genre of a panto or not, and you want to see your favourite soap star or gladiator, you were there, whether you liked it or not. And you know what? In Paul's case, he got chance to make that first genuine person-to-person connection with two people. He's gone on to be the backbone for the oracle about Mickey and Cobra and myself forevermore, and I'm sure has impacted and shaped his life conversely.
Oh, and for the better as well. And I think the one moment, and I've watched it back now, the final show, and I can remember watching it on the telly, and I've watched it back now and seeing that montage towards the end, but just hearing it from Paul's side, where he actually talks about just him standing there, the lights had been turned off, and him just standing there and thinking, that's it. And he stood around for ages, even when they came back in and started sort of dismantling everything. And you just think about, I don't know whether it's almost like a relationship breakup or losing a loved one or family member. Just, that was his life for 8 years plus, and to suddenly just have it end like that, the emotion that he must have gone through in that final show, it must have really been a trauma for him.
Well, it is. I mean, you know, I'm a psychotherapist, and things like attachment and loss, which is like such a key theme that we all do in life, because our lives are shaped by the attachments we make to a job title, to a pet, to someone we love, or a show that we love. I can just picture that young man again with that beautiful face and that kind smile, but that smile kind of disappearing as the show and the arena get stripped bare, and he still stood there. And it must have been actually quite traumatic, because it was a huge vehicle to kind of start shutting down, and he was watching every kind of little move of it going, well, this is it.
Yeah.
What would have been going on for him then? And quite something. Even now I think, wow, that's huge. Who would do that to themselves? Yeah, Paul Noddings.
And putting you on the spot a bit here, Di, did you carry on watching the show after you left, and can you remember when it ended?
No, I didn't, and I'm being really honest with that. I was still in the throes of, I want to disassociate from the show, and it's only because where I was in my life in terms of maturing, and I want to become a psychotherapist and a counsellor. How is anyone going to take me seriously if they've seen me in my Lycra? So I had to do, I'd got married, and I'd moved into a different phase of my life. I was very fond of it, but I didn't, and I wish I had now kind of supported the show right until its very end by watching it. But I found it really difficult to watch because I left after an accident, and I found some of it, like the big falls, would literally make me feel quite poorly. So I didn't, and I regret that slightly, because it was just such a magnificent show. I could watch it all now, no problem, but at the time I didn't.
And I think he does talk about actually the moment that you left, because he did go to all the live shows as well, and he can still remember that moment that you left, and he knew when it was announced that you weren't coming back, and in his words, it was never going to be the same. And I think that probably is reflective of quite a few Glad fans, but as we've said previously as well, for every time that a wave of gladiators left for whatever reason, there were new gladiators that came in for a new audience, for another 10-year-old.
Absolutely, and that's how all the best shows are. They evolve, and they bring someone in for a similar demographic or something completely different, and the show was full of that. It was kind of like a box of Quality Street. Everybody's got their favourite.
What is your favourite in Quality Street?
I knew you could ask that. It has to be anything to do with caramel, something that's a firm caramel, but not the buttony one, because that pulls my fillings out, or my veneers out rather.
I always like anything with nuts in it. There's a hazelnut one, isn't there?
Yeah,
I'm sure there is. And the other thing that I really liked from the chat with Paul, and I don't know, I can understand why it hasn't got off the ground just yet, because obviously we've spoken a lot, Di, previously about you meeting people at sort of Comic-Con events, and Paul talking about wanting to make a Glad Con, and I genuinely do think there would be legs for it, but the trouble trying to get an event like that off the ground is, I can understand why he hasn't done it, and I'm just hoping that through this podcast we can actually start to build up some momentum to actually make it happen, even if it is small to start off with.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been to a few Comic-Cons now, and I think the location will be key, and somebody with a business mind about hiring the venue, making sure all the right gubbins are in place. I mean, I've done enough of them to know a beat, but the location, because, you know, Glad fans were obviously very much Midlands central, but they were all over the country. And it's just being able to make sure, I mean, the Comic-Cons I've done down at Stoke-on-Trent, for instance, you know, these people spend a lot of money travelling across the country on a train. They queue for hours. I'd want to make it more fluid, or be part of something that's more fluid, it makes it more accessible, because, you know, it costs and things like that. If we could make it so it was accessible and a real celebration of the show, and I think you're right, maybe start small and do a couple, but yeah, I think it's a great idea. Get me. Oh, Comic-Con organiser. But I think Paul's the man to do it. I think that...
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
Definitely. Yeah, don't put it in my hands.
We will support him through our voices on the podcast. And as you alluded to before the interview, Di, I think it's only fair now that Paul is now very much part of the team. And you said, I liked what you said earlier, producer Paul. I think that rings quite true, doesn't it?
It's very true. He's got to be in on this now, moving forwards. And I wonder if let's hand it over to him when we next get a chance to be with him, as to what would be his Gladiator name beginning with P, so we can do these cheesy intros and outros with producer Gladiator Paul. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
Podcast Paul. Podcast Gladiator.
I'm not sure Gladiator. Although if you can call Gladiator Vogue, then I'm pretty sure you can probably just pick any name that you want, and as long as a person's got the right attitude and personality, then they can probably pull that off. But yeah, I think it's only, and it'd be good as well when we have got some of the other chats coming up. It'd be good to try and weave some sort of Paul Noddings isms into some of our chats as well, because I know that he's so connected with so many of the Gladiators. But we're really keen to hear from all the Glad fans, and as always, you can email us at thegladpod@gmail.com. They can also get in touch with us on social media, can't they, Di?
That's right, on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, and they're all called The Glad Pod. It's easy. Be lovely to hear from you. It would be.
And as always, we'll leave you with these very wise words from everyone's favourite Gladiator narrator, John Sachs.
Good competition, good spirit, great sportsmanship as both contenders show mutual respect. Join us again next week for the ultimate challenge, the might of...